Welcome back to our series of lectures. We will move forward to discuss about biological classification today. Now, classification is the process of identifying, naming, and giving a proper position to an organism. Different systems of or different patterns of classification were given over the years. Today we will discuss a few of them and of course details about a particular type of classification. Biological classification to start with. Now we have to know about Aristotle. Aristotle is considered as the father of biology. He was the first to give a system of classification. But the system of classification of biological organisms where it was quite simple based on just few morphological characters. Like he classified plants into simple three categories: trees, herbs, shrubs, and trees. And animals were classified just on the basis of presence or absence of red blood. Presence or absence of red blood was a simple criteria that he used to classify animals. But as time went on, more new characters were discovered, so the particular system given by Aristotle became obsolete. Later, Carolus Linnaeus proposed the two-kingdom classification. In the two-kingdom classification, Carolus Linnaeus classified the entire living kingdom into two categories, Plantae and Animalia, based on few morphological characters. Even he based mainly on morphological characters. But later, a lot of criticisms were encountered in this particular two kingdom classification, and they were that there was plants and animals. Okay, they classified as plants and animals basically on the few morphological characters, mainly like autotrophic, heterotrophic, or those conditions. But later it was seen that some cells are prokaryotes and some are eukaryote. And here, even in plants, they were eukaryotes, prokaryotes. Even in animals, eukaryotes, prokaryotes were placed by Carolus Linnaeus. Now, so there was no distinction, clear-cut distinction seen in this system of classification. Likewise, there was no differentiation between unicellular and multicellular organisms, photosynthetic, non-photosynthetic organisms, because within plants were placed even the fungi. Now, fungi are heterotrophic, whereas the chlorophyll-containing plants, they were photosynthetic, but all were placed in one particular group, Plantae, but they had a major difference of preparing and non-preparing, ability of preparing or not preparing the food materials. Likewise, the systems of classification went on, and finally, in the year 1969, a scientist, R.H. Whittaker, Robert Harding Whittaker, proposed the five-kingdom classification, which is very much accepted even today, and we follow it. In this particular system of classification, the organisms were based on the type of cell, mode of nutrition. All these characters were very well considered. Now, R.H. Whittaker classified the entire living kingdom into five parts, five kingdoms: Monera, Protista, fungi, Animalia, and plants. So, five kingdoms. I repeat: Monera, protists, fungi, animals, and plants. Now, all the prokaryotic organisms were placed under Monera. Then all the unicellular, eukaryotic, mostly eukaryotic, all eukaryotic and mostly the unicellular organisms, they were placed under the Protista. Whereas the eukaryotic multicellular, which could not prepare their own food, which were heterotrophic purely, they were placed under fungi. The animals, eukaryotic multicellular organisms, which were also heterotrophic with other characters which differentiated with fungi, they were placed under animals. And plants, the purely autotrophic organisms, were placed under plants. Let us learn a little more details about this 5 kingdom classification. The same way here. Now, how did R.H. Whitaker classify? All organisms, it was found out when they studied the cell type. Cell type, it was found that organisms will be either prokaryotic or eukaryotic. And about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, we have already talked about in our lessons on cell. So here, if the organisms were found to be having prokaryotic cellular structure, they were placed under Monera. And if they were found to be having eukaryotic cellular structure, then they were not placed under Monera. Further, what was seen? Whether they were unicellular or multicellular. If they were unicellular, they were placed under Protista. If they were multicellular, then again they will not be under Protista, but they will be kept separate. More characters will be seen. If they were without cell wall, eukaryotic, multicellular, cell wall absent, then they were placed under animals. If eukaryotic, multicellular with cell wall, they could be either plants or fungi, depending upon whether they were phototropic or heterotropic. So this way the classification was done. So one by one, the simpler organisms occupied a position with the more complexities or more characters. They were placed with under different kingdoms. So likewise, we have this 5 kingdom: Monera, Protista, Plantae, Fungi, and Animalia. So with cell wall, plant and fungi; without cell wall, Animalia. Then eukaryotic, unicellular, Protista; prokaryotic ones all will be under Monera. Now here, the criteria which R.H. Whitaker used to classify the organisms into the 5 kingdom were nutrition mainly and body structure. Nutrition and body structure, cellular structures were also taken. Now, accordingly, he classified into these 5 kingdoms. If we see here, type, that means the cellular structures, you can see here unicellular prokaryotes, unicellular eukaryotes, multicellular non-green eukaryotes, that means non-photosynthetic, multicellular eukaryote, multicellular eukaryotes. So these three, they are similar, these two are similar in with regard to the number of cells, but prokaryotic, eukaryotic, and these four are all eukaryotic. Then later, mode of nutrition. Monera, they were found to be autotrophic or heterotrophic. That means they could prepare their food or they may not be able to prepare their own food. Similarly, in all the cases except for fungi. Now, for Plantae. Now, plants, they were purely autotrophic. They will not be able to prepare, they are always able to prepare their own food due to presence of chlorophyll. Animals can never prepare their food due to absence of chlorophyll. Likewise, fungi can also never prepare their food, and rather they are always saprophytic or parasitic. Animals, not necessarily they will be saprophytic or parasitic. They can be holozoic also. Holozoic means when they ingest food, they are dependent upon the producers or the plants. Now the body type, depending upon the body type, the differences in Monera, they do not have a proper nucleus. They do not have the cell organelles as we are already familiar. They have mesosomes, they have a single chromosome. So those are their structure is very simple. The rest of them, all of them have a well-defined nucleus. For Protista, they might be having cilia or flagella for movement. Then the fungi, the Protista also usually they will be without a proper cell wall. Then fungi made up of long filaments called hyphae. Later, we will be learning more in details about fungi. Now, fungi, they are made up of very long filaments which are known as hypha, and the whole structure is known as mycelium. They have the cell wall, they have a cell wall which is made up of chitin. The chitin is a special type of polysaccharide, and their cell wall is made up of chitin. Plants, they, as we already saw, that they are autotrophic, so they have a very well-defined tissue system with specialized organs. Chloroplasts, plastids will be present in some specialized cells which we call as parenchyma, collenchyma. So they have a very well defined and well distribution of cells and tissue systems. Likewise, animals also, they have a very high level of tissue differentiation with specialized body organs and well developed nervous system too. Now, with regard to cell wall, again, plants, they have cellulose cell walls, whereas animals, they do not have any cell wall. Some examples are cited here: bacteria, blue-green algae, amoeba, perimysium, in protista, fungi, yeast, rhizopus. Then plants, as we all are familiar, all the plants growing around us, green plants. Then animals also we are very much familiar about. Now, of all these categories, we have to learn in like proper manner. All the characteristic features we will be learning about. To first start with bacteria. Monera, the Kingdom-Monera. Now, Kingdom-Monera, the main characteristics, as we have already said, they are all prokaryote cells, oldest life forms, first formed lives. They are all prokaryotes with no proper nucleus, no cell organelles will be present. Their cell structure is very, very simple. They are always unicellular. We have learned very well in details about bacteria. Earlier discussions we have done that. You may refer to that for more clarification. Now all these bacteria, they will be placed under this kingdom Monera. Then with regard to nutrition, they may be autotrophic or they may be heterotrophic. That means they may prepare their food or they may not prepare their food. Now the ones which can prepare their food from the carbon source, carbon dioxide, then for energy, they're dependent either on light. If they're dependent on sunlight, they will be photosynthetic autotrophs. If they're dependent on some inorganic chemicals as an energy source, then that we will call as chemosynthetic autotrophs. And if they cannot prepare their food, totally dependent on others, then that will be heterotrophic, which can be the parasites or saprophytes. Now, on the basis of nutrition, we have classified in this way: autotrophic, heterotrophic. Then on the basis of shapes, even we can classify Monera, the shape of the cellular structure. Based on the shape, we have these four types: bacilli, which are rod shaped, as you can see here; cocci, which are spherical shaped if the body is spherical shaped; spirula, if it is spiral shaped; and vibrio, if it is comma shaped. That means now among these, again, they can be autotrophic or heterotrophic, but just on the basis of the shapes, we have classified into these four types. Furthermore, we have the Monera. We can again have furthermore classification, that is Archaea Bacteria. Now, what is Archaea Bacteria? Monera can be classified broadly into two: Archaea Bacteria and Eubacteria. Archaea Bacteria and Eubacteria. Eubacteria will be either autotrophic or heterotrophic, whereas Archaea Bacteria will be purely heterotrophic. Now, the basic difference between these two is that Archaea Bacteria do not need oxygen, whereas Eubacteria, they completely are dependent upon oxygen. So, these are the anaerobic bacteria, anaerobic monerans. Moneran is the kingdom that we are discussing. So, Archaeabacteria, they are said to be the most ancient organisms on this earth. They have a very tough cell wall. They can be found in any extreme habitats: halophiles, that is salty areas; very hot humid areas; high temperatures; even in hot water springs you will find Archaeabacteria; in oxygen free marshy areas, even and mostly they are found in oxygen free, this is absence of oxygen areas, marshy areas where there is a release of methane. Now, there are some importance of this Archaeabacteria. Archaeabacteria are used in production of gobar gas. Gobar gas is what? It is the biogas from cow dung and sewage and in ruminants. In the stomach of ruminants, you all are familiar that ruminant stomachs, they have a special ability. That means they can there is presence of methanogens. Methanogen is a type of Archaea bacteria. Methanogens are present in the stomach of on the ruminant's stomach, and there what will they do? They will ferment the cellulose that the cattle, that the animal, the cow, they're chewing and having the grasses. They will digest the cellulose and also cause fermentation, thereby releasing biogas. So this is a very good source of biogas. This methanogens, then along with the excreta of the cow, they will release the methanogens. That methanogen, that source can be used to decompose sewage materials. So that is about Archaea bacteria. Now eubacteria, which are also the true bacteria, they can be either autotrophic, heterotrophic. As I already mentioned, they're dependent upon oxygen. So the autotrophic ones can again be chemo or photo if they depend on chemicals for energy, if they depend on light for energy. Heterotrophic ones can either be again parasitic, saprophytic or symbiotic. Now the autotrophs, they are able to synthesize their own organic food. They can prepare their own food from inorganic substance, that is carbon dioxide. Then heterotrophs, unable to prepare or manufacture their own food. And they are always dependent on an external source. Out of that, they can either be parasites, saprophytes, or symbionts. So on the basis of nutrition, we have this classification, and on the basis of shapes, we have Spirilla, Cocci, Vibrio, Bacilli. We have the four types on the basis of shapes, and this is on the basis of nutrition. Now, the autotrophic bacteria, as I have been repeatedly mentioning, they can prepare their own organic compounds through the process of oxidation of carbon dioxide. Now here, what will happen? The reduction of carbon dioxide, by the reduction of carbon dioxide. Now here, what will happen? If they take sunlight as the source of energy, they are photosynthetic. If they take energy from hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, all such compounds, then they will be chemosynthetic. But basically, both of them are capable of releasing glucose in the body. Now, the photosynthetic bacteria. Photosynthetic, the ones which are dependent on sunlight for their energy source, they have chlorophyll in their body. They have chlorophyll in the cells, and that is a special category of bacteria which we call as cyanobacteria. These are the cyanobacteria. Now, cyanobacteria, they have chlorophyll. As like the green plants, they have chlorophyll in their cells, and due to the presence of chlorophyll, they can absorb sunlight, convert into chemical energy, and then use that energy to convert carbon dioxide to glucose. Cyanobacteria were the first organisms which had started with photosynthesis. It is considered so. They are also called as BGA. BGA stands for blue-green algae. Earlier, they were placed under algae, that is true plants, but later, seeing their prokaryotic cellular structure, they were picked up from there and then placed in the Kingdom-Monera. Cyanobacteria, they can be unicellular, that means single cell. So example, spirulina, they can be colonial. Colonial means they remain attached with each other, forming a cluster, that is inamina, or filamentous, that is oscillatoria. They can be found in freshwater, marine, that means they are mostly aquatic habitat. Then, the most important feature of this is that they can fix atmospheric nitrogen. Now, what is this fixation of atmospheric nitrogen? Fixation of atmospheric nitrogen means the nitrogen that is available in an atmosphere cannot be directly utilized by either plants or animals. They have to be converted to a form which we can absorb easily. Plants can absorb easily. So that conversion, the atmospheric nitrogen, and it is converted to either nitrate, NO3, or nitrite, NO2. And this conversion can be helped. This conversion can be done by the category of monerans, that is the cyanobacteria. And how can they do? They can do because they have a special type of cell called as heterocyst. Special type of cell means they are unicellular, but when they remain in this colonial form or the filamentous forms, then one or two of them will develop into these specialized cells called heterocysts. And within this heterocyst, they have all the enzymes, all the chemicals required for transformation or change of atmospheric nitrogen to nitrate or nitrite. So what will happen, these heterocysts, they help in that conversion. And so within this oscillatoria or anabina like organisms, what will happen, there will be, this will become the source of nitrate or nitrite, and that can be absorbed by higher plants. And from higher plants, if plants get the nitrogen, they will prepare ammonia with it, and when we humans or animals consume the plants, we get the protein or we get the amino acids from them. So that way, photosynthetic bacteria are economically very, very important in nature. Then next we have the chemotropic autotrophs. These are the autotrophs preparing their own food but dependent on chemicals for their energy source. Inorganic chemicals like H2S, nitrites, or ammonia gas even. Examples given are nitrosomonas. They will help in mainly decomposition of organic materials. They decompose and at the same time use that chemical to produce food for themselves, and in that process they are digesting the dead organic materials. Then the heterotrophic bacteria. Now what are these heterotrophic bacteria? Heterotrophic bacteria are the ones which cannot prepare their food. Examples, lactobacillus, which helps in production of curd from milk. It will help in conversion of curd from milk. So these are also mainly decomposers. So they are decomposing the protein of milk, coagulating the protein in milk, and which we call as curd. That will also help in the release of lactic acid. This lactobacillus, they will help in release of lactic acid within it. Then they can act as decomposers and help in formation of humus. Example, pseudomonas. Then many antibiotics are obtained from some species of bacteria, streptomyces, bacillus. Okay, so what will happen, they can release antibiotics. Now bacteria, many of the bacteria, they can release antibiotics actually are released to protect themselves from other organisms, but at the same time, if we can extract that antibiotic from that particular bacteria and then use it for our purpose, for our benefit, to protect from germs, that will help in protecting, antibiotics that helps in killing other organisms, so it is utilized. Then there are many bacteria present, monerans present in soil, which helps in again fixation of atmospheric nitrogen. Little while ago I already talked about it. That is done by photosynthetic. There are even some heterotrophic forms which can actually help in fixation of atmospheric nitrogen, like rhizobium bacteria. You must be familiar with the term rhizobium. Rhizobium bacteria, they attach themselves with the roots of leguminous plants like pea plants, and thereby they help in changing atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates or nitrites, just as cyanobacteria does. So, but of course, these are not autotrophic. They are dependent upon the leguminous plants. Then another one is Azotobacter. Azotobacter is a heterotrophic bacteria, but they are free living. They also help in changing or converting atmospheric nitrogen into usable forms. So this is about the classification and characteristics of bacteria. To sum up everything, Whitaker classified organisms into 5 kingdoms: Monera, Protista, Plantae, Animalia, Fungi. Today we have discussed about the first kingdom, Monera. Monera includes all the prokaryotic organisms. Now, Monera can be broadly classified into 2, Archaebacteria and Eubacteria, based on the source of oxygen. If they are dependent on oxygen, we can call them Eubacteria. If they do not need oxygen for their survival, we call them as Archaebacteria. Further, on the basis of shapes, we can classify into the 4 types: Bacilli, Cocci, Spirilla, and Vibrio. And now coming back to that Archaebacteria, example methanogens, they are dependent upon They are dependent upon the like say hydrogen sulfide, such things or gases, and thereby they will help in decomposing. They are mainly decomposers. They will help in decomposing substances, at the same time release biogas. Then eubacteria can be classified again into two types, autotrophs and heterotrophs. Again, autotrophs can be photosynthetic or chemosynthetic or chemotropic. If dependent on light, they are photosynthetic. If dependent on chemicals, they are chemosynthetic. And purely heterotrophic are the ones who can decompose organic material. So that is about Monera. That is about Monera. And Monera, they please remember always that they include only prokaryotic. All prokaryotic organisms are included within Monera. So that is all for today's discussion. Next day we will continue with Kingdom Protista. Thank you.